She was the keeper of stories, but I never expected mine to begin with her. The old library was a sanctuary. The smell of aging paper and polished wood filled the air as I stepped inside. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, where the world outside melted away into soft whispers of pages turning. I had always been drawn to the stillness of libraries, the quiet hum of knowledge that filled the rooms. This one, though, felt different. There was something timeless about it, as if the stories it held had been waiting for me. I had only come here to escape the rush of the city, to lose myself in the world of books. But from the moment I walked in, I was immediately aware of her presence. She stood behind the counter, organizing the books with a methodical grace. Her movements were deliberate, each action carried out with purpose. Her hair, dark and pulled back into a neat bun, caught the dim light filtering through the high windows, casting a soft glow around her. The woman was in her early 40s, poised, confident, and yet there was something quietly vulnerable in the way she moved, as though she were hiding a deeper part of herself behind those shelves. I hesitated for a moment, uncertain of why I felt drawn to her. She wasn't the kind of person you'd expect to catch your attention, not in a superficial way, but there was something about her, her presence, the way she seemed so completely in control of her world, that made me want to know her story. The way her fingers brushed over the spines of the books, as if she knew each one intimately, struck me as oddly captivating. She was the keeper of stories, yet she seemed to have her own untold one. As I wandered deeper into the library, pretending to browse through the shelves, I couldn't help but glance over at her again. Our eyes met for the briefest of moments, and I felt a strange flutter in my chest, a quiet recognition. She quickly turned away, as if caught off guard, but not before I noticed the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of her lips. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me linger, to make me wonder if she had seen something in me too. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was nothing more than a passing attraction. She was a librarian, and I was just another face in the crowd. Still, the more I tried to ignore it, the more I felt an unexplainable pull toward her. As I moved through the aisles, my gaze would inevitably wander back to her, and every time I caught a glimpse of her, I felt that same flutter in my chest. I found myself standing in front of the checkout desk, finally ready to leave, but not quite ready to go. She looked up as I approached, and our eyes locked once more. This time, the smile was more genuine, and she spoke. Looking for something in particular, she asked, her voice soft and inviting, with just a hint of curiosity. I swallowed hard, taken aback by her warmth. Just browsing, really. I wasn't expecting to find such an amazing place. She nodded, her smile widening just a fraction. It has a way of surprising people. I returned her smile, the connection between us something unspoken, but undeniable. She hadn't asked me any questions about who I was or what I was doing, but there was a quiet understanding in the way she spoke. It was as if she recognized the unspoken loneliness that brought me here. And in that moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, she was waiting for someone like me to walk in. I left the library with a book in hand, but the real story, the one I hadn't expected, had already begun. The next day, I found myself walking back into the library, almost as if my feet had a mind of their own. I hadn't planned on returning so soon, but the quiet allure of the place, and her, was irresistible. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but the second I stepped through the door, I felt that same warmth, that same unspoken connection. The air felt thicker here, filled with the weight of books and unspoken words. She was at the counter again, her back to me as she sorted through a pile of returned books. This time, I didn't hesitate. I approached the desk slowly, trying to make my presence known without startling her. She looked up, and for a split second, our gazes locked again. There was a quiet recognition in her eyes, as if she knew exactly who I was and why I had returned. Her lips parted in the softest of smiles, and it was enough to make my heart skip a beat. "Back again?" she asked, her voice warm, like the soft rustling of pages in a forgotten novel. It was almost as if she had been expecting me. I shrugged, trying to sound casual, though I could feel my pulse quicken. I guess I'm just a sucker for old books, I replied with a half-smile, though the truth was, I wasn't sure what had drawn me back. It wasn't just the books, it was her. She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of a leather-bound book on the desk. Books have a way of calling to people. Sometimes, it's not the books we seek, but something else. There it was again, that quiet depth in her words. I found myself leaning in slightly, my curiosity getting the better of me. What do you mean by that? She paused, her eyes searching mine as if deciding how much to reveal. Sometimes, we come to places like this because we're searching for something we can't quite name. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's a moment to get lost in someone else's world. Or maybe, it's just to find a place where we can be ourselves. Her words settled between us like a soft whisper, and for a moment, the room seemed to fade away. It was as if she had taken a glimpse into my soul, and I couldn't help but wonder if she had been feeling the same pull I had. We were two strangers sharing a quiet moment of understanding, a brief connection that went beyond simple small talk. I never thought of it like that, I said, my voice quieter than usual. Maybe I'm looking for something more than just a book. She smiled again, this time more knowingly. Aren't we all? The conversation lingered in the air long after I had left, and I couldn't help but feel like I had stumbled upon something much deeper than a simple library visit. Something had shifted between us, and I knew then that this was just the beginning of a story neither of us had expected. Days passed, and I found myself returning to the library with more regularity. It became part of my routine now, walking through those familiar doors, the soft hum of the library filling the air, and the comforting weight of silence that seemed to wrap itself around me as I made my way to the bookshelves. But it wasn't just the books that kept drawing me in, it was her. Each time I walked in, I felt that familiar flutter in my chest as my eyes sought her out. She was always there, cataloging books, adjusting shelves, her movements graceful yet purposeful. There was something magnetic about her, something in the way she seemed so completely at home in the quiet of the library, as if she belonged to the space just as much as the books themselves. And with every passing day, the distance between us felt smaller. One afternoon, after a few moments of lingering near the fiction section, I mustered the courage to walk up to her. I wasn't sure why I felt so nervous, after all, we had spoken before. But something about this moment felt different. The conversation we'd shared had left an impression on me, a quiet weight that made me eager to know more. As I approached the counter, she looked up with a soft smile, and I felt the familiar warmth spread through me. "Back again, I see," she said, her tone light but with that same undercurrent of understanding. "Yeah," I replied, running a hand through my hair awkwardly. "I've been thinking about what you said last time." Her eyes met mine, a flicker of curiosity passing through them. "And what was that?" I hesitated for a moment, trying to put my thoughts into words. "About how we come to places like this looking for something we can't quite name. I guess I've been wondering if maybe I'm doing the same thing." Her expression softened, and she leaned forward slightly, her eyes searching mine. "It's not always easy to name what we're looking for," she said gently. "But sometimes, it's the quiet moments, the ones that don't seem to matter, that give us the answers." I felt a sudden connection, a brief moment of understanding that passed between us without either of us needing to say much more. It wasn't just a conversation anymore, it felt like an exchange of something deeper. I could see it in the way she looked at me, as if she understood exactly what I was feeling but was waiting for me to say it aloud. "Do you think that answers are really found in places like this?" I asked, almost shyly. Her lips curved into a knowing smile. "Maybe. But it's not always about finding the answer. Sometimes, it's about being open to the possibility that the answer might find you." The weight of her words lingered in the air, and for a long moment, we stood there, both of us caught in the quiet rhythm of the library. It was one of those rare moments when the world seemed to pause, when time held its breath. And in that silence, the unspoken connection between us deepened, without either of us needing to rush it. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just drawn to the library or the books. It was her, the way she moved through life with a quiet confidence, yet held a world of unspoken stories. And for reasons I couldn't quite explain, I wanted to be a part of those stories. The days continued to pass, but something had shifted. Every visit to the library felt different now. I no longer walked in simply to escape the world outside, I walked in with a quiet anticipation, drawn by the pull of her presence. It wasn't just the books that kept me coming back, it was her. The brief moments we shared felt heavier now, charged with a subtle tension that neither of us acknowledged out loud, but both felt deeply. She had begun to recognize me more, and with each passing interaction, the silence between us grew more meaningful. There were times when our conversations barely scratched the surface, small talk about books, or the weather, or how quiet the library had been that day. But in those fleeting exchanges, there was an undercurrent that neither of us was willing to address. It wasn't just about the words, it was about the way we looked at each other when the silence stretched on a little too long. The way her eyes would linger, the way her lips would curl ever so slightly at the corners, almost like she was waiting for me to say something more. I had noticed it on the days she would stay just a little longer, as though she wasn't quite ready to leave. The soft rustle of pages would fill the air, and I would glance up to find her watching me, her gaze soft, thoughtful. She wasn't intrusive, never overbearing, but the way she positioned herself close, just within my line of sight, made it impossible to ignore the tension building between us. One afternoon, I found myself standing near the window, pretending to browse a row of books, but my attention was entirely on her. I could feel her presence, like a steady hum that filled the air around me. I glanced at her from the corner of my eye, watching as she adjusted a shelf, her movements fluid and graceful. Her brow furrowed slightly in concentration, and her lips parted as if she was deep in thought. She was beautiful, in the way that someone who wasn't trying to be beautiful could be, unassuming, yet entirely captivating. The space between us felt electric now, charged with the tension neither of us wanted to acknowledge. Her gaze met mine briefly, and in that fleeting moment, everything seemed to freeze. I could feel my heart quicken, my breath stalling in my chest. I was waiting for something, for her to make the next move, to break the silence between us, but she didn't. Instead, she simply smiled softly, and the moment passed. I stood there for a long moment, caught in the gravity of her gaze, trying to decipher what was happening between us. Was it just me, or did she feel it too? This slow-burning connection, this quiet pull that seemed to draw us closer without either of us needing to say anything. The library had become our silent space, the place where we both let our walls down without ever fully acknowledging it. The tension, the subtlety of it all, left me unsure of what to do next. I wanted to close the distance, but I wasn't sure if she was ready for it. All I knew for certain was that I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel it, the connection that was slowly, silently, changing everything. It was one of those rare days when the library was quiet enough for me to truly feel like it was just the two of us in the space. The sunlight outside had dipped into the soft golden hues of late afternoon, casting a warm glow on the rows of books. The low hum of the air conditioning was the only sound that filled the silence between us, and yet it felt almost suffocating. It was as if the world outside the library had ceased to exist, leaving just her and me, caught in the delicate web we had woven without even intending to. I had come in that day with a strange sense of resolve. I wasn't sure why, maybe it was the way her smile lingered in my thoughts, or how the touch of her hand on the books had imprinted itself in my memory. But I knew that today, I couldn't keep pretending that this connection between us wasn't growing, wasn't changing everything. It had become something more than a fleeting attraction or idle curiosity. It was a quiet but undeniable pull that I couldn't ignore anymore. She was shelving books at the far end of the room when I walked over, my heart beating faster with every step. I hadn't planned to confess anything, but I could feel the words stirring in my chest, waiting for the right moment. As I approached, she glanced up, and for a brief second, I saw something flicker in her eyes, something soft, almost vulnerable. Her lips parted as if she was going to speak, but then she closed them again, as if waiting for me to say something first. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "You've been here for a long time, haven't you?" I said, my voice a little shakier than I intended. "I mean, you've built this place, really, made it your own." She smiled, a small, thoughtful smile. "It's more than just a job. It's a space where I can breathe. And I guess, where people can find a bit of themselves in the books." Her answer was gentle, but there was something deeper there, a kind of understanding that transcended words. I took another step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "I don't know how to explain this," I said quietly, almost to myself, but loud enough for her to hear. "But I keep coming back because I think I'm looking for something. Maybe even for someone." Her eyes softened, the vulnerability I had sensed in her now clear in her expression. She took a step toward me, the air between us thick with something I couldn't name. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "You're not the only one." The silence that followed felt like it lasted a lifetime, but in it, everything we hadn't said hung between us, unspoken but understood. I didn't need to say any more. She had already heard me, in ways that words couldn't capture. In that quiet space, our confession wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud or hurried. It was simply the truth, whispered softly between two people who had, without meaning to, found something more profound than either had expected. And in that moment, standing so close to her, I realized I wasn't just here for the books. I was here for her. And whatever the next step was, I knew I wouldn't be walking alone. The days continued to pass, but somehow, with each visit to the library, the space between us became a little more comfortable, a little less charged with uncertainty. The initial awkwardness we had both felt, the tension between two people unsure of what was happening between them, was slowly being replaced by something quieter, more familiar. Our conversations were still small, but there was a softness to them now, a warmth that wasn't just about pleasantries. It felt like we were learning to exist together in this shared space, slowly discovering how our lives might fit into the spaces we had created. I had become accustomed to the quiet hum of the library, the soft shuffle of pages and the occasional creak of the floor beneath our feet. But today, there was something different about the atmosphere. The library felt even more peaceful than usual, almost suspended in time. The sun was beginning to dip low in the sky, casting a soft, golden light that bathed the room in a warmth that seemed to settle deep in my bones. It was the kind of moment where everything else faded away, leaving only the present. And right now, the present was her, standing a few feet away, organizing a stack of books. I found myself standing still, just watching her. She was moving so gracefully, completely immersed in her task, yet there was something incredibly intimate about the way she moved. It wasn't just the way she handled the books, it was the way her hands brushed the edges of the covers so gently, as though she were treating each one with care. The way she tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, the way her lips pressed together when she focused. Every little movement felt like a part of a secret dance that only I was lucky enough to witness. I took a step closer, my heart beating just a little faster. I didn't know what I was hoping for in that moment. Maybe it was the chance to get closer, to experience the closeness that had been growing between us. Maybe it was just the desire to see how far this connection could go. And before I even realized it, I was standing just beside her, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. She glanced up, and for a brief second, our eyes met. She smiled softly, almost shyly, and for a moment, I felt a kind of calm settle over me. There was no rush here, no urgency. Just the quiet understanding that we were here, in this moment, together. The space between us felt intimate, not in the way of grand gestures or bold declarations, but in the simple way that two people could just exist beside each other, feeling the weight of everything unspoken. I found myself unable to resist the urge to reach out, and my hand brushed lightly against hers as I passed a book to her. The touch was fleeting, but it felt electric, like a spark of something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't the first time we had touched, but this time, it was different. There was a tenderness in it, a promise, unspoken but real. She didn't pull away, and I didn't either. Instead, we both lingered in that quiet space, allowing the connection to deepen without needing to explain it. Her hand rested for a moment longer on mine, and I could feel her warmth, the way her pulse quickened, mirroring my own. We didn't say anything, but in that moment, I knew that something had shifted, something had deepened. It wasn't the grand confession of love, but it didn't need to be. It was a simple touch, a shared breath, and the unspoken acknowledgement that something beautiful was unfolding between us. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to rush it. The space between us, both physical and emotional, was exactly where it needed to be. There's a certain kind of peace that comes after the storm. The quiet that follows when two people, who have danced around their feelings for so long, finally allow themselves to simply be, no expectations, no confessions, just the comfortable presence of one another. That afternoon in the library, everything felt as if it had fallen into place. The world outside had faded into the background, and there was only the two of us, sitting there in the quiet stillness. The weight of what had been left unsaid now settled into something more tangible, more real. She was sitting across from me, tucked into the cozy corner by the large window, the fading light catching her features in a soft glow. The atmosphere between us was different now. The tension that had once hummed beneath our conversations was gone, replaced by something deeper, something more fulfilling. We no longer needed to fill the silence with words, for the silence itself spoke volumes. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a quiet confidence that this, whatever this was worth holding on to. She glanced up from the book she was reading, her eyes meeting mine. There was no hesitation anymore, no awkwardness. Her gaze was warm, content, and her lips curled into the softest of smiles. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to overthink, to second-guess my actions. The way she looked at me now was not just with curiosity or the tentative interest of someone unsure. No, this was something different. It was as if she had already seen all of me, and in some way, I had seen all of her. And still, we were here, still sitting across from each other, still wanting to be in this shared space. "I've never really let anyone in like this," she said quietly, her voice softer than usual, as if the words themselves were fragile. "Not in a long time." I leaned forward slightly, feeling an overwhelming surge of warmth. "I understand," I replied, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "I don't think I ever expected to be here either. But somehow, it feels like this was always meant to happen." There was a slight pause, a silence that felt heavier than most, but in a way that wasn't uncomfortable. She set the book down on the table between us, and with a slow, deliberate movement, she reached across the space to place her hand on top of mine. It wasn't the first time we had touched, but this moment felt different, more significant. Her touch was gentle but certain, the warmth of her hand against mine grounding me in a way nothing else had. For a long moment, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. The library around us felt almost irrelevant now, the soft sounds of pages turning and the occasional rustling of the wind outside all blending into the background. In that quiet, simple moment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was craving. We didn't need grand gestures. There was no need for declarations or anything more than what we were already sharing, this quiet, slow-burn connection that had grown in its own time. Her eyes met mine once more, and in that silent exchange, I realized that the hesitation, the uncertainty, had faded. This was no longer about waiting for something more, something to prove or understand. It was about acceptance, about embracing what we had found in each other. And as I sat there, hand in hand with her, I knew that the story we were beginning wasn't one that needed to be rushed or explained. It would unfold in its own time, and in that unfolding, we would find the peace we had both been searching for.